Verse 2. Chorus. Drums in. rotation.
I can't do it for you. There's a song written on your heart only you can sing. And when you sing, enemies flee.
Instrumental.
When you sing, prison walls come falling down. When you sing, heaven invades the earth. So just begin to lift up your hallelujah. Raise it like a banner. Raise it like a flag. Raise it in the middle of the storm. Let it rise. Let it rise. Like a symphony to the king.
Hey guys, let's go over the tones I used for this video, as well as kind of the parts I played and the thought process behind them. So first and foremost, I'm using my Gibson ES330, and then that is going to a Helix at my feet, and then I've got the Kemper over my shoulder there. And basically how I'm doing it is guitar into Helix, and then I have an effects loop send from the Helix to the Kemper, and then stereo out of the Kemper into the stereo return of the Helix. So yeah, I've got it all set up so that I can put effects in the Helix before or after the Kemper, which is super useful, and I'll give some examples of how I'm doing that in a second. So real quick, this is the bass tone. I'm using the Tone Junkie Top Cap Club S Sparkle 2. Let's see if I got that right. Yeah, profile. It's kind of a mouthful. From Tone Junkies, it's great. It's a top hat amp with an overdrive baked into the profile. I'm not normally a fan of those types of profiles, but this one, I'm a huge fan of. It sounds great with all the guitars I've played through it. So yeah, highly recommend that profile. So real quick, let's listen to how it sounds. I've got a little bit of compression on the Helix, nothing else. A little bit of spring reverb on the Kemper, and that sounds like this. So yeah, sounds great. I'm a big fan of that tone. It's past edge of breakup, not quite crunch. It's just kind of in between. The amp is really cooking. I'm a big fan of that, especially because it allows you to use the raw amp tone more versus requiring, you know, an overdrive for it to feel right, especially when playing with a band or in a mix. So that's the bass tone. Now let's go ahead and add on to that. So this is going to be a plate reverb. I call this kind of like my slapback reverb. I have this on all the time. It's kind of a fairly mild decay, like it's 5 on the Helix, but I've got the pre-delay maxed out, and then I've got a kind of a regular mix of 30 range, and that sounds like this. So yeah, it just kind of spreads everything out, gives a little more space, doesn't really get in the way of playing, it just kind of makes everything sound better. So that's on all the time. And then I also add in, so if you've seen any of my videos before, I did a video on the Helix and how to get great reverb sounds. I'll link to that below. So in that video, I kind of detailed a system I set up and created to add multiple blocks together to kind of create your own reverb sound that, in my opinion, sounds a lot better than any of even the new reverbs just by themselves. So again, I'm doing that same concept here. Slight update to that. I might do a update video. If you're interested, comment below, but it's a slight update for that. But for this song, I'm not really doing any ambient reverb parts, so it's pretty basic, kind of mellow reverb, and it sounds like this. So it just kind of spreads everything out, it's like glue to the sound. This is always on. So that, right now, this tone serves as the foundation for the whole song. Everything is built upon this right now. So let's kind of go over some of the specific tones I use throughout. See how we're doing on time. So for the intro tone, in part, I decided to keep it super simple and just kind of rock on that root note, the C. And just kind of sit on that. And for that, I decided to keep those same reverb settings I had before. That'll stay the same, and then add in multiple delays, dotted eighth delays, to get that kind of galloping effect. Not really galloping per se, but just kind of that constant, yeah, I don't really know how to describe. You know what a dotted eighth sounds like. So first off, I've got an analog delay hitting the front end of the amp. I'm a huge proponent of this. I didn't coin this term, but it's a great term, dirty repeats. So basically when you have a delay in front of the amp, it kind of blooms and has this grit to it that's you just can't get with the delay after the amp. So a huge fan of that. So I've got just the analog delay hitting the front, and that sounds like this. So you can hear how it's kind of gritty and just kind of not super clear and pristine. And then after the amp, I've got a dotted eighth digital delay. And this, I've utilized the scale parameter, which is one of the best tools in the Helix, in my opinion. With delays, you can set the scale to be, so you can set the left and right delay to be slightly different times or drastically different times from each other. So say you had a quarter note delay, you set the scale to 75, 75% of a quarter note would be a dotted eighth. So that's kind of how that works. For my purposes, I prefer to have a scale parameter at like 98 or 99. So very subtle, just gives slightly different times left and right. So hit just slightly off from each other. And it just kind of helps make everything sound really wide. So it's that digital delay sounds like this by itself. Set pretty subtly. And then I stack on for this part one more digital delay. And this is again dotted eighth. This is the vintage digital model, and I've got some quite a bit of modulation, I should say, on this one. And so these are the two digital delays together. And then add on the analog delay. So you might be thinking 3 delays, that's crazy. Kind of, except it's really not. I look at it like stacking overdrives. You stack multiple overdrives to get that, you want different character overdrives to stack with each other, and it just kind of combines into something more present, beefier, whatever. Same thing with delays. If they're set fairly subtly by themselves, you stack them together and they stay more present in the mix. You can have kind of different modulation, just kind of lets you craft it a little more. So for that intro part, I really wanted the delay to be super present. So all of it together sounds like this. I think I was on the neck pickup for that recording. So yeah, so the delays are present, there's some nice modulation to it, and yeah, that's the intro tone. So let's go ahead and move on. So for the chorus, I'm using the same tone as the intro, no overdrives or anything. I took off the vintage digital delay, so I just have the single digital delay with a slight spread to it, and then the analog delay in the front of the amp. That'll be on for the whole song, by the way. And then I added in what I like to call dirty verb. And that is putting a reverb in front of the amp. And similar to the delay, a verb hitting the front is going to bloom. It's going to get this grit to it. It's going to kind of compress. And, you know, you're going to have to, it's trial and error with it, because I found with the Helix specifically, almost always, if you're using a kind of a really driven or even edge of breakup tone from the Helix amps and you run Verb in front of that, it's going to sound out of control. It's going to bloom and compress and explode. It's not a great sound. Similarly, several profiles I've tried with the Kemper, kind of a not same result but a similar result, but I found in general the Kemper has higher headroom, and some profiles have a lot more headroom, so they take it a little better. So the dirty Verb, again, it just kind of blooms and just makes everything sound a little bigger and sustain a little differently. So for the chorus part, I'm just playing an F major 7 to an open C shape, muting that high E, using my thumb to hit the root, taking that same shape, bringing it down to the A minor 7, open G again, and then barring the B and E. And then for the G, I'm doing that same shape, but now letting the G and B string ring open and hitting the high E right here on the 3rd fret. Again, taking the capo into consideration so it's easier for you guys. So that sounds like this. And I'll show you dirty Verb on and off real quick. Now off. So yeah, it doesn't have the sustain, the bloom, the grit. So the dirty Verb helps a lot with that. So then verse 2, same exact sound tone as the first intro verse, except for I added in a vibrato. I'm a huge proponent of the vibrato on the Helix, or just vibrato in general. I love it when it's set kind of a slow rate, kind of a medium depth, so it's not super obvious seasick kind of sound, you know, that most of us attribute to vibrato. And just kind of adds some movement. And also in the Helix, if you put it before the amp, it just adds some thickness and girth to the tone, and it pushes the amp a little harder, so overdrives a little more. So for that, I'm just kind of rocking on that root note, and I did like a little arpeggio, and that sounds like this. And I'll show real quick without the vibrato. Excuse that mess up there. So yeah, hopefully you can hear a difference. It kind of adds some girth, it adds some movement, just makes it sound better in my opinion, a little more interesting. Moving on to the next chorus, same parts as I played for the first chorus, but this time I added in an overdrive. I'm using the Kinky boost, which is the EP booster, and it sounds like this. So yeah, it's just bigger as you would expect when you have a stronger chorus. And I think I did like little accent notes. I think I accented right here on the F. I think I did the major third of the C, the minor third of the A, and I think I hit the B string 3rd fret. I can't remember in the video, but it sounds like this, little accents I did. And that's just, as I'm walking down, it's just accenting specific targeted notes of the chord to make it sound a little more interesting and kind of follow the vocal a little bit. So that sounds like this. So just something to make it a little more interesting. Moving on to the little breakdown section. This is, again, the EP booster on, and just the analog delay and the digital delay, and just kind of a basic, great general sound. modulation and how it just kind of, the analog delay in the front just has this really cool tone. So that's that part. Then moving on, let me see how we're doing on time. I think we're okay. So then the next part is a little slide in section where I'm just outlining kind of the chords again, make it a little more interesting. So on the C, I'm just sliding in right there. Then for the G, I'm visualizing this G. Then for the F, then this F. So it sounds like this. I forgot to add, so I've got the dirty verb on, all 3 delays on, so a lot going on for this sound. And then instead of the EP booster, I'm using the TS-808. So I've got the tube screamer on, so it's a lot of gain, way too much to do anything busy, but to just let something sustain out, it sounds pretty good. So this is what it sounds like. So yeah, a lot going on, you know, too much to just be doing all these big chords or anything, but if you kind of keep it simple, you know, play to the sound, basically. So that's what I did for that part. And then after that, let me think where I'm at. Then for the rest of that portion, I'm just kind of following the chords, goes to the G. So now I'm targeting the major third of the G, going up here, singing this triad, back to the octave of the major third. And then I go to the A minor, targeting this note, all those notes of the A minor chord. So basically that part sounds like this. So that's kind of the gist of how it goes. When I'm over here at the A minor, and then it's holding on the C, and then it goes to the F for the tag, I think. And then just ending on that note, or on that dyad right there. And then when it comes back, I outline the A minor right here, the triad. A lot going on there. So, you know, A minor, just outlining it right there. All right, so for the next chorus, I came up with something a little different. I think it sounds really cool. So for the tone, I am using the analog delay, the basic digital delay, no dirty verb. I still have the TS-808 model on there. And then I've got, again, that vibrato, which has got that kind of light setting, but it just adds some thickness to everything. And so I'm playing in the 5th position of the pentatonic scale here, and basically the part just goes like this. So that repeats and it sounds like this. Now I'll show real quick what that sounds like without the vibrato. With the vibrato. So in a mix, the vibrato will just help it stand out a little more. It gives it a little more girth, makes it a little more interesting. So yeah, that's that part. Pretty simple. And then it goes back into just kind of chugging along here. It's kind of what I did before where I'm just kind of following along the chords, but then I did this little kind of slide back and forth right here, and it sounds like this. This is going to the same tone I had before for that slide in section. So it sounds like this. Can't remember what I did exactly there, but something along those lines. And again, just following the chords, and I just kind of like that little, what that sounded like. You know, goes back to the A minor. So yeah, super simple, and then I'm just kind of building up. So then for the next part, when the band cuts out, there's this cool bass line, and I just kind of slowly built in with the volume pedal. I've got the 808s, the lawn, and then the 3 delays on, no dirty verb or modulation. And I'm just kind of rocking on the 5th of the C chord here. And so just kind of doing that with it, and then I do this kind of walk down thing and walk back up. And then I hit the 1 of the chord here. And so it sounds like this. And so it sounds cool just kind of going back and forth between the 1, and then when you add in the octave of the 1 right here, it sounds really cool. I'm just kind of gives it a little more flavor. So it sounds like this. So keep that going, and then when the song really starts driving, just kind of rocking that 1. And I think I did a little octave thing where I slid up and then slid back down and went back to it. So it sounded something like this. And then from that, I jump straight into the very end. This is kind of the craziest tone, the most going on here. The whole band jumps in. It's just big moment in the song. It's awesome. And I stack a clon and the 808 together. Clon in front of the 808. The clon has a low gain, fairly bright, quite a lot of gain combined. And then I have the digital delay and the analog delay, and that's it. And for this part, it's kind of hard to play with, you know, the neck so far into the body on the 330, but it's something I'm happy to live with because it's my favorite guitar. I love this guitar to death. So just makes me work a little harder, but that's okay. So for this part, I'm doing a similar thing to the chorus that was modulated, that whole, that part, but instead I'm just doing a little repeating part. It sounds like this. So that's that part, and that's just kind of rocking for a while. And then I just do a little, when it goes to the G, I just kind of do this little thing here. And then it just kind of kicks into this big part where I'm, just kind of string skipping, something I wouldn't normally play, but just kind of, as I was messing around with the song, I decided to try something a little out of the box than what I would normally do, and I think it sounds pretty cool. So that part goes like this. Can't remember remember how I ended it exactly, but something along those lines. And it's just string skipping, octaves, and then hitting that note, which kind of tweaks your ear a little bit. Yeah, pretty basic, just kind of a big tone. Yeah, and it just gives something a little different. So instead of just doing big chords or whatever, it just gives some movement, a little more power to it, I think. So that's it. Those are the tones. Those are the parts I played. As I mentioned before, you know, this song was at my church. We have on Sunday nights, we have an extended set where, you know, we have 5 songs or so added, you know, usually pretty last minute. And, you know, we just kind of go with the flow, and it's great. I've learned so much through that. And this was one of those songs that was chosen. I never heard it before, and we played it, and it was so powerful. I loved it. It was such a great song to play. And it was pretty open, so I felt like I can do whatever, you know, I kind of wanted. And I thought I came up with some cool stuff to play in the moment, but I wanted to take it home and mess around with it a little more, and did so, and came up with this stuff. You know, I decided to not listen to the song, to the actual guitar parts. There's not really very many iconic ones in there anyways, but I just wanted to kind of do my own thing and, you know, have my own voice and see what came out. So this was an experiment for me to just kind of just play whatever and see what comes. So these are, you know, not tones that are used on the song, not parts, other than maybe the intro is kind of similar. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think of this idea. You know, I would encourage you guys definitely to give this a try. You know, it helps push you, helps you come up with your own voice, helps you to kind of be yourself versus always trying to emulate other people, which is kind of what's so prevalent in praise and worship. So yeah, so that's it. Hope you guys enjoy the video. If you want to see more stuff like this or have any song suggestions, please write me in the comments. I always appreciate seeing those comments. All right, see you guys.